The first in the Ariel Poems was The Journey of the Magi, 1927. 1928, Eliot did the song for Simeon. 1929, he did a very different type of poem, Animula, which is a Latin word for the simple soul, the soul on their journey, the journey through life. So it seems quite different. From the one hand, the biblical stories, the journey of the Magi, or Simeon who came to the temple when Christ was born. And yet the underlying themes are much the same, but approached from a very different angle. Animula is the story of a young child being born. So the first part of this particular poem is what Blake would call the songs of innocence, a child curious and interested about all sorts of things. Um, their curiosity taking them a variety of directions, and their innocence making them open to all sorts of things. But as a child moves, and the first line actually is right from Dante, the Commedia itself, starts with issues from the hand of God, the simple soul. And so the first part is almost similar to Shakespeare, and Eliot, a real fan, obviously, of Shakespeare and Dante, and you'll often get this weaving together of Dante and Shakespeare in a lot of T.S. Eliot's poetry. So the first part of Animula is the song of innocence, the young child, but inevitably the journey unfolds, and a person cannot stay a child forever. They cannot remain always in innocence, protected, insulated. And the child moves forth into teens and then adulthood. But it's a sensitive child. And so being sensitive and thoughtful to the big issues of life, decisions being made are very, very difficult. And the child often becomes trapped in their own introspectiveness. They become paralyzed. They're not sure how to fare forward. They're not how to make sense of what they're doing. The danger is then one retreats into one's private little world because it's safer, it's predictable, it's secure, or behind books, what Eliot talks about the Encyclopedia Britannica. He talks about issues from the hand of time, the simple soul, irresolute and selfish, misshapen, lame, unable to fare forward or retreat. And so the simple soul is torn. It's not like they know how to orient anymore. They know what they want to be free from, but no idea how to make decisions and what they want to be free for. And this becomes the dilemma what Eliot is summing up in terms of the much of the modern world that he was living, particularly the more thoughtful, the more sensitive. They're torn between ideal and reality, between complex inner life that they often don't know how to prioritize or navigate with. And so this nature of the Animula, what he's getting at is it's not quite the Magi who knew where they were going, even though when they returned to the world they had come from, there is a sense of, well, we've lived intensely for a moment, but how are we to live now? That intense experience is over. Simeon knows he's coming near the end of his life. So where's he going? He's not sure where he's going. And so what Eliot is doing in Animula, he's bringing the bigger story of the life journey into the context of the complex world of what does it mean for the coming, or Advent, Advenio in that sense, not only for the ultimate to come to time, but for our own coming to be in that sense. And so the shadows within that Eliot is reflecting on Animula, when do we become shadow? When do we become substantive? And the Animula then comes to the end where he talks about pray for Gutierrez, avid of speed and power, so the person only thinks of doing and accomplishing. For this one who made a great fortune, the person who just lives for money. For Boudon, blown to pieces, the political activist in the middle of ideological culture wars, and they went his own way and got lost in going their own way. And pray for Fleury, by the boarhound slain between the yew trees. And he ends with, pray for us now at the hour of our birth. Not just birth as in literal, but what does it mean to be born into meaning and focus and direction in terms of what the Magi had a temporary sense of, what Simeon seemed to know choices he made were meaningful, and yet very unsure of where he was going. And so when Animula comes to an end, it's pray for us now at the hour of our birth, so one can pray for those who are beginning their lives, but all through our lives we're dying and being reborn. And so pray for those now as they are being birthed again and again and again in their journey through life, and that's in many ways what the Animula is all about. And they're even given, as it were, the living first in the silence after the viaticum, which is food given for the journey. It's also food given as people are dying, and so Eliot is doing interesting things with the Latin term as well here. The Eucharist to be eaten, but it's also food for the journey, but it's also given to people who are dying into their rebirth. And so Animula is quite different from Journey of the Magi at one level and Song of Simeon, and yet the deeper themes of dying and rebirth, knowing how to orient and also being disoriented in the orienting of the journey itself. So such is number 3 in the Advent series of Ariel.